Welcome back. Today we're testing the new Motiv Primal Ghost. If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon. First impressions, we've loved the Jackal Ghost. We've loved many primals. Where does the Primal Ghost fit? Well, let's try to figure that out. We last saw the Impulse Core and the Primal Shock, and that put the core in the Venom Shock cover. I think that essentially created an amped up Venom Shock for tweeners and strokers. Now, Motiv wrapped the Impulse Core in the cover from the Jackal Ghost. This time is certainly a step down from the Ghost, but trying to figure out where exactly it fits. Now, starting with Tyler, the Coercion HFS cover feels actually quite clean with the Impulse Core. The cover has some mid-lane read, while the core is a fairly long RG for a strong ball. I find this to mean on paper the cover has the potential to create some level of mid-lane read, while the core possibly creating some back-end angle, and we kind of saw both sometimes. So at times the ball really looked like a mid-defined ball, getting good length and turning over very late. And then some shots the ball looked to read mid lane better and therefore have a predictable, smoother, but still driving move, which might place it in the mid-control category. And while Motiv places it more in what I consider mid-control when you look at their ball guide, for Tyler, I'd say it leaned maybe towards mid-control plus, is something a bit more angular than what it looks like in the chart. And this bit of a chameleon behavior was a little confusing for us in terms of where we'd want to put it in a bag. Tyler compared it to the Raptor Rain, and you can see what a ball does when there truly is some mid-lane read, and with the core churning up, it looks climbing as opposed to just hooking. Alright, now on to me with the Primal Ghost, and I find a nice home between the second and third arrow. I found pretty easy length and later motion. At first blush, when testing, it felt like it's possibly less dynamic, almost like a lower end ball. But when I did try something weaker, I was able to see that the Primal is dynamic, and it was just the way the lanes were playing. I kind of got locked in and had a very nice look. The lane was playing, I'd say, super slick down the middle, which made anything down the middle hydroplane. However, the Primal Ghost carried extremely well from the line I was playing. Pretty well, and even with misses in, it was carrying really well. And what I was trying to figure out was where I would fit it in a bag and when I would take it out. And I don't currently have a Jackal Ghost anymore in the bag, but I wasn't instantly thinking this looked like a step down like I mentioned before. However, I did toss the Raptor Rain, and you can actually see how much mid lane friction there was as the Rain just kind of drained so much energy and didn't hit nearly as well as the Primal on this pattern. Brian's up next, and the Primal Ghost was a decent look. Honestly, a pretty straightforward shape for him. He can stay in that typical track area. It was dynamic enough to hit and feel a bit more than a true mid-control ball like a Venom Shock or even the Primal Shock, but also comes with some limitations of not being able to move in too much. In other words, it felt more like a slightly more dynamic Venom Shock type ball than a step down to a much more dynamic Jackal Ghost. I hope that kind of comes across clearly. Now, Brian was also between the second and third arrow. Misses in on this pattern really just kind of glided, and while they tended to hold pocket, it probably didn't carry as well for Brian as it did for me. It's a fairly typical house shot, but it usually gives you an indication of the core strength. So bigger cores have a better chance of carrying when you miss in. He also compared to the Raptor Rain, and that ball simply looked like more ball everywhere. More mid lane read, more back end. So just way more dynamic overall, and he had to move deeper, which all makes sense, particularly where he is on the lane. Bottom line, besides catching myself saying Primal Jackal versus Primal Ghost, is definitely a middle-of-the-road strength ball with a longish but still mildly dynamic core, I'd say. I personally prefer a lower RG for the middle of the bag, which was my biggest challenge. However, ultimately, what Motiv is doing is providing you a different shape in that middle, which allows bowlers to pick and choose depending on what what pattern you're seeing and what you want. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.